Whenever I start a problem like this, I will identify that my b is a 1 right there in front of x. B is 1. So the period of the function is 2 pi divided by 1, which is 2 pi. And my critical points then will be spaced every 2 pi divided by 4, which is pi over 2. So we'll space them every pi over 2. What's the one thing we're changing in this problem? C. So off to the side, I want you to pull that information out. Let's just go like this. PS stands for phase shift. What kind of phase shift are we doing? You take all the stuff inside the parentheses and you set it equal to 0. There's one of those problems, again, a lot of people are going to look at it and just mentally do the problem. That's great. Go ahead. Add the pi over 2 to both sides. And you get x is pi over 2. So this is a phase shift to the right, pi over 2. Every one of our critical points, we're going to pick the graph up and move it to the right, pi over 2. So where's my first critical point supposed to be, or where is it normally? At 0. Now it's going to be at pi over 2. So I'm going to write that one down. So instead of being at 0, we're going to start our graph at pi over 2. Now I'm going to space them every pi over 2 from there. So there's my first critical point. What's pi over 2 plus pi over 2? Plus another pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. Plus another pi over 2. 2 pi. Plus another pi over 2. How many critical points do I have written down? 5. So you go until you have 5 written down. Now notice I'm saying the red one is where I started. Because that's due to a phase shift.
And you don't have 0 because you have the phase shift.
Because everything's getting moved. Right. Did I change the amplitude? No, so the amplitude is still up 1, down -1. Where does sine want to start?
Midline.
At the midline. So let's put a dot there. It goes up to a maximum there. Midline there. Minimum there. Midline there. So our graph looks like this. Now there are teachers out there that get a little fussy about, hey, you know, you should start on the x-axis or the y-axis back at 0. I mean, I really don't care. But I have to have 5 critical values from you. So if you want to, if you want to bring this one back, it's going to be here at the 0. Or if you like to type it into your calculator to make sure you have it right, you know. But that's what the basic graph will look like. So again, the b value is 1. So the period will be 2 pi divided by 1, which is 2 pi. And the critical points, you split that up into 4 equal parts. What are we getting for a phase shift? What? Negative. Oh, pi over 3. So normally our first critical point will be sitting at 0. It is now going to be sitting at negative pi over 3. Then we're going to be spacing them out every pi over 2. Now these two numbers do not play well together, so you have to do a little mental math or get out your calculator. What's negative pi over 3 plus pi over 2. So if you're going to do that, you have to get a common denominator, and that'll probably be 6. So negative, this number is really negative 2 over 6, and this number will be 3 over 6. So what's negative 2 over 6 plus 3 over 6? 1 over 6, or pi over 6. Now add a pi over 2 to that one. So what's plus 3 pi over 6? 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3. Add another pi over 2, or 3 over 6. So that'd be 7 pi over 6. 7 pi over 6 plus 3 pi over 6, or pi over 2 it is, gives me 10 pi over 6, which is 5 pi over 3. So let's take a number that was 5 divided by 3 minus negative 1 divided by 3. And what did I get? Period of the function, 2 pi. So that I did the last critical point minus the first one to make sure it matched the period of the function. Again, with those numbers, because they're a little bit crazy, and my suggestion would be if I was taking the same test you guys are taking, for accuracy, I would be doing it on the calculator. I would not risk making a mistake, because if you mess up one number, the rest of your critical points are off, and I have to take 2 off your graph. So where does cosine normally start? And by the way, we did not change the amplitude, so up the 1, down to negative 1. Where does cosine want to start? At a maximum. But we're flipping it, right? So instead of starting at a maximum, we're going to start at a minimum. Now another common mistake that happens is 0, one of our critical values this time. No, we skipped over it, right? We went from the negative pi over 3 to pi over 6. When we skip over it, do not, I always get students that put a dot there still, and then they're off the rest of the way. So the next critical point is actually right there at the midline, up to a maximum, back to a midline, and then finishing at a minimum. Nice smooth curve. And there's our graph. Question? So we're going to quickly find period of the function, the amplitude for each one, and let's go ahead and find like critical point spacings. So what's my b value in this first problem? Pi over 2. So I'm going to, for the period, take 2 pi and divide by pi over 2. Which is kind of ugly looking, but we go 2 pi times 2 over pi. So instead of dividing by this fraction, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal, a little chunga on the pi, and we get 4. So in this case, the period of the function would be 4. What's my amplitude? It's the 2 that's sitting out front. If you were going to find your spacing on the critical points, you would take 4, divide by 4, which is 1. So your critical points would go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty easy. See how we're doing that? Quickly do B and C. B and C. I'll pause it, and then you guys will work, and then we'll put some answers up. What's my B value in part B? Pi over 2, right? And it's this pi over 2 here. So then the period of the function is 2 pi divided by pi over 2, and I get the same thing, 2 pi times 2 over pi, chunga, 4. Critical points will then be 4 divided by 4, which is 1. What's your amplitude? That's your amplitude. 2. Where would your midline be? I know I didn't ask this, but it's this thing right here. Midline will be at y equals 2. We'd actually have a phase shift in that one. So a lot of stuff going on, but we only had to find period and amplitude, right? Say that again. Yeah, the negative pi over 2, you would pull all this stuff out for a phase shift. Set it equal to 0. So pi over 2x equals pi, add the pi over 2, and then you divide by pi over 2. So everything's going to get shifted 1 to the right.
We didn't need to find them.
We didn't have to do all that other stuff, just period and amplitude.
We didn't have to find the phase shift.
B value is 2/5. What's going to happen? 2 pi divided by 2/5 is 2 pi times 5 over 2. We get a little chunky on the 2's, and you're left with 5 pi. What's your amplitude? 2/3. So that one won't stretch up to 1. It almost up there.